In the last episode of The Time Compass,
you see, in ancient India, accepting the destiny that was drawn out for you before you were born was like accepting the laws of nature. Fighting your destiny meant losing the opportunity to be reborn as something better in the next life. A caste was a way of organizing people, giving them a place in society from the time they were born. Each child belonged to the caste in which they were born, and they usually had to fulfill this role for the rest of their lives.
The Time Compass.
India, Part 2. The caste system that existed in India was very strict. If you were born in a caste, you usually stayed there. And people in lower castes had much harder lives than those above. So why did the Indian people believe that people could suffer such different destinies based only on what family a child was born into? The reason was that, to Indian people, life isn't something that just happens once. When a person died, the belief was that they came back to live a new life. And when they died in that life, they were reincarnated again into the next life. And when that person died, well, you get the idea. Each time, their soul was born again in a new body to live a new life, and the cycle continued. But who and what they were reborn as followed the law of karma. A person's karma is sort of like carrying a backpack around with a person's soul. Each time the person did something bad, it was like placing heavy rocks in the bag. Every action a person did in their life had a consequence. At the end of life, when it was time to make the journey of reincarnation, all the bad things a person did would weigh their soul down, and they would be dragged down the ladder of the caste system, forced to live a harder life the next time around. If you were really bad, you were reborn as an animal, or worst of all, to be born as a Dalit. People so low on the ladder, they didn't even belong to a caste. But if the person was good throughout their life, then they might have a chance for something better in the life after that.
The Path to Enlightenment.
In the year 563 BC, a man brought a new perspective to things in India. And his ideas helped many people who were suffering under the caste system. This man was called Siddhartha Gautama, but in time, he came to be known as Buddha. The young Siddhartha was the main heir to a small kingdom. His father loved him greatly and did not want him to know suffering. The young prince was isolated in a wonderful palace, surrounded by various pleasures, servants, and delightful music. In this way, his father tried to hide aging, sickness, and death from him. But Siddhartha suspected that there was more to life than his luxurious prison. And since he was a restless young man, he began to leave the palace to see his subjects. The first time that he went forth, he saw an old, stooped man. Another time, he saw a sick man. And on another occasion, he saw a dead man. Siddhartha was dismayed. He didn't know about the suffering people had to endure in the real world. He decided not to return to his life of fantasy. Instead, he abandoned all his wealth to meditate on the suffering of people in the world. Siddhartha went deep into the woods and lived without a home. He shaved his head and wore nothing but rags. Siddhartha practiced something called meditation. Using the power of his mind, he slowed down his breathing, only ate a tiny bit of food, and could remain virtually motionless for hours or even days. He meditated to learn the mysteries of the universe. He spent years meditating, eventually learning to meditate more deeply than any other man. One day, something happened. It was like a great light turned on in his soul. Siddhartha left to tell his people of his great discovery. From that day on, he was known as Buddha, which means the Enlightened One. All suffering is born from the desire to acquire something. If we manage to stop desiring, we will also stop suffering. Buddha taught that by controlling one's desires, a person could become their own master. So that when one dies, one will no longer need to be reborn as something else, and one's soul will reach nirvana, where suffering and ailments do not exist. This means a person's soul could remain in a state of peace